Everybody's in the room. Thank you guys for being on time. But I would love for you to read your mission or vision statement and then share only one, either or, one skill set that you're willing to develop in order to implement your mission, vision, and values, or one mindset shift that you would like to have regarding business. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and call on some people this morning. Let's see. First, we're going to hear from Brother Damon. Then we'll hear from Andrea. And I'll open the floor that way.
Good morning, everybody. This is my check-in or check-in with this question. My mind shift would like to have regarding business. A national level, we belong to a number of organizations. And one thing we say is that we're just not a 501, we're a movement, meaning that on a national level. So these issues just don't affect us locally, but they affect us nationally. So in a national, bigger scale movement for our business, we want to grow.
I love that. Definitely thinking nationally versus thinking locally is a great mindset shift. One of the things that we talk about in business as leaders is like the stuff that nobody says enough of. So we're going to cover some of that on our way to digging into bylaws, board of directors, budgets, and all this fun stuff. 10 ugly truths about business. And these are the things that you learn in between building your tools, building your skill sets, finding the tools, and changing your mindset, right? Running a business is not fun. It may have fun moments, but this is work. And so for a lot of us, the reality is hitting that, hey, this is like a whole other job, or this is more of a job than my main job and raising a family. Yes, this is true. If it was not, everyone could do it, right? So you must be willing and accepting of being a professional bill payer, because the bills don't pay themselves and they don't wait until, oh, I got it. Oh, community caught on. Oh, there's no pity party here. We get to be big players in a big arena, which means we got to come suited and ready to win. If we're not such, then we need to ask someone, how do we get suits? How do you dress? Don't be afraid to keep going back to the drawing board until you can get to the point where the business pays the bills. Because ultimately, if you're paying all of the bills, then we're not in a business. We're in a community service. We're in a donation. Even a nonprofit has a financial structure that allows it to operate by getting funding to sustain, right? Smart businesses approach from purpose and skill, not passion. We talked a lot yesterday about your origin story. There's a reason we talked so much about that and had all the warm conversation first, because now we get down to the meat of what purpose is the leader serving? What purpose is the board serving? What purpose is the organization serving to drive funding, right? And so we have to be grounded in our mission, in our vision. What am I showing up for? Because there's going to be some challenges to get from the point of working in my purpose and really running this thing at a level where it's sustainable. Okay, so right now, your main job is to become who you need to be, not to be who you were set out. So a lot of us, we showed up, oh, I'm gonna sell books. But then I said, I'm going to put on a business hat and I'm going to be a business owner who operates a company that publishes and sells books. Those are two different people. The person who showed up to just write the book is not the same person who was developed in order to operate the business that learns the marketing, becomes the voice, or either creates a different identity, right? So these things take time. But a true CEO or leader connects purpose, passion, and profit. Power of the P's, the PPP loan. You don't want to be alone, possibly struggling while everybody else is succeeding because you operated in your passion without focusing on where there's good service and purpose, which may be collaboration, right? In order to connect back to profit, which is ultimately equity, right? We have all these other intangible forms of equity we talked about. We got to get the money, right? And so you learn to get to the point when you honor your deadlines and schedules because there's too much to do. You also learn that people want you to do exactly 110% what you're expected. Not too little, not something to decide too much, but exactly what's on target. And to respect the space. If something's asked of you, do what's asked, right? Stick within the confines. Your organization and development is key for your success, but you learn over time how to prioritize, pivot, and plan. So y'all are not going to get all this stuff in a week. That's why today is going to feel fast and packed, because that's probably how it feels when we're running these businesses on our own in our silos, operating organizations, right? A lot of us are first time business leaders. So we have to learn to be prepared or get prepared to be seen and to be known, because our reputation will lead and follow. A lot of what we heard from Letitia yesterday about origin story was built on purpose, skill, and reputation. She definitely has a passion for the people, but that ain't what she set out to make the money based on. That's what she set out to keep her genuine to the service, right? So really understanding how our reputations precede and follow us is key. Every program is not a nonprofit organization, but all organizations should have programming in place. So some people will discover that their idea of a business is really a program. You want to run a program, and maybe you want to collaborate. Maybe that is the golden ticket to the financing, the time management, the balancing, the sense of success, and the camaraderie and community. And then for some people, it's like, hey, I haven't gone big enough because this is really a nonprofit that I can take all the way. And why am I not thinking big? So being honest with ourselves about those things is very critical before we get to the point of asking for money. What happens a lot of times is we skip steps. Some of us are in this room today, self-included. I'll put my hand up for skipping steps. And it's by the grace of God that I was able to be directed back to the ability to do it right and do it right the first time, right? All right. So first thing that I would like you guys to consider is your approach to forming your nonprofit. This is a great opportunity to go back in and do some auditing. We talked yesterday about leadership management, about forming a team a little bit. We've talked about collaboration, right? So you want to just be looking at your shared governance. How's the organization, being managed? Who's running what? What are the factors in how they're running things, the titles, the roles? Okay. What are the bylaws? We're going to be talking about bylaws in just a bit, but what are the bylaws? Your time factors, your movement, your flow, like how you actually operate in real time. Do you have an operating schedule, plan, implementation agenda, right? Documentation that employees, volunteers can utilize. And then quality and care. How are you delegating? Quality and care means both the care of the audience or clients and the organization and the staff, right? So that nobody is overwhelmed. This is why we run through an order of operations before we get to the point of asking for the money. There's a few things that we want to have in place before we say, hey, I'm ready to go for grants. Okay, so defining your mission, vision, and values, having a clear perspective on how to articulate what we're here to do, what it looks like for us, our community, and the world at large, and what values we stand on in the process of achieving these goals. Then we need some research, the space and the opportunities, same time in real time. Space being demographics, location, areas of service, right? Some of us have things that are so unique, there's 50 other people doing them, but we just need to do a little research to figure out what it is that they are not offering or where we can collaborate. When we do this in the beginning, it saves us time as we move forward. Because the worst thing we can do is be excited about doing something and we pick a name based on what we want to do, but we haven't really figured out our mission, vision, and values or researched the space. Now we got a name we stuck with that doesn't really fit what we're doing, right? So we've done all these things. And so for most of us, you've established, at least to some point, the formation piece. So you filed and legally incorporated your nonprofit. You may or may not have an online presence, but let's talk about building your board of directors before you start to apply for grants, okay? One of the most important things in your governing documents is your bylaws, because a part of your bylaws is your board of directors. So this is the stuff that we really want to give pause. That's why I have on all red today before we get on go. Red light, green light. That's how I do business. And you notice how they never called the game green light, red light. They always say red light, green light. Because what you do before you cross the street, Somebody unmute yourself and let me know.
Look both ways.
Stop.
Period. Because who's getting hit? Not me. Who's making it to the bank? Miss Trees. Okay. So red light, green light. You stop, you look, you audit, you reflect before you proceed and project, right? Let me look at things, make sure everything's copacetic before I move forward and before I put me, my business, and other people out into the world, right? And if I'm already doing that, then it's even more important that I look at this stuff. So a big part of your bylaws is your name and your purpose. It's the reason we run through this stuff in the order that we do. And it's okay if we have questions. It's better that we do an audit and take a serious look than to keep going, right? I added a whole separate company to my business in 2022 and didn't even know it was really a whole separate company. And then had to figure out, like, what are you doing? This is not even in direct alignment with what you're supposed to be offering, right? But it was like my bylaws. I'm for profit, so I have different documentation, but it was my governing documents that allowed me to look back and get grounded, right? So it's also going to tell you information about membership. So if you are thinking of going national, this is why Brother Suja's comment about mindset shifting to really having a clear understanding of the capacity you want to serve is very important. Because if I want to have a membership, then this is something that I also have to file. It's not just a decision I get to make, right? So the number, roles, and duties of your board, the structure of the decision-making, who's calling the shots and how. These things are very important. We're going to talk about building your board next and some tips that you can take to address your board. How to call, have, and document your meetings, how to handle financial information. It's not just getting the money that's important. It's how are we documenting that we are ready for the money? People who are giving you money want to know that you guys meet. They want to see that you're meeting like professionals, having tactical, cognitive meetings, right? That you're handling the financial information appropriately. Okay, and then that you're keeping your bylaws up to date or amended. I'm going to stop my share for 1 second, and I'm going to ask a question. Does anybody know how often you have to update your bylaws or your board meeting?
You said how often we have to update our bylaws or what?
Or hold a board meeting. And either person, if you know the answer, feel free to pop in. Brother Suja, thank you. You could pop in and go ahead.
Yeah, I believe the bylaws are every other year, and then I think you have to meet. Isn't it what you put in the bylaws? That's what you have to go by, but I'm not sure exactly if there's
Come on. That's the best answer is yes. If I file, if when I file, I put specifics, my board will meet every single week, then we need to be meeting every single week. But you are mandated to file an annual reporting of an annual meeting at least once per business calendar year. And then it should be, yes, at a quarter at a minimum. Thank you, Deanna, in the chat. Janaea also says once a quarter. So we should be meeting once a quarter. I believe the required filing, Letitia or Sean, tap in, make sure I'm not rusty. And if I am, give me smoothed out. I believe once per year is the annual reporting requirement, but you should be having the meetings once per quarter, which is what is copacetic for best business practices. Okay. And then bylaws required. Now it's good to send them in. It's good. Janaea got my back. She said, I already checked, sis. Letitia, y'all come on. I love some support. Letitia says that's right. Cause you know, if I say check, Tisha gonna check something. She not playing about her people. But yes, you definitely want to consider the legal update of the bylaws annually, but I believe it's required whenever you make any changes. So your bylaws are what you file to say, this is how we're going to run, and we're going to make sure we follow all of your other requirements to update you once a year or whatever y'all have said between Uncle Sam and Auntie whoever. Now, if I make a change, I need to report it immediately. Okay, so I'm going to go back into sharing my screen. Let's see here, so you guys can see, because some of what happens when we get around people who are safe for us to learn is we pick up on some game and we want to make some adjustments sometimes not, but sometimes so, right? And so if any of these are things that you either have not placed in your bylaws, then if you haven't placed it, then you know you want to definitely refile so that you can have it in there. But if you have and things have changed, we had several people who said, these were my beginning board. This can't be the board that's the building board, because now I have better insight, I have better information. I pick Uncle Cousin and them, right? You just need to file the bylaws so that you can update the statement. Does anybody have questions on anything so far? Okay, I'm going to keep going. So you want to hold an official board meeting. I'm not going to go through this detail by detail, but I am going to let you know that you want to make sure that when you hold your board meeting, you want to have an idea of where the organization is going. So if there is a need for documentation to be filed or a task list of other SMART goals, then you should already have that identified. It doesn't matter what level the organization is at. You should come into the meeting with a few key things: a sense of time, how long they're going to need to be in this meeting, an agenda, what are you covering and talking about, and then all relevant updates. So any filings that have happened, financial statuses, meetings that have been held, the board should always be up to speed on this, okay? There's also some other requirements that the board can assist with that we're not going to talk about today, because on Friday, we're going to be hearing from an expert about annual compliance. But I'm going to go ahead and get us into the next big topic that your board should be supporting you on, which is your budget. Somebody unmute yourself and say, get money.
Get money.
I was like, wait a minute, nobody getting money? Okay.
Can I jump in for a second?
Please do, please do.
I just wanted to make sure, because I was doing some Googling real quick. Also, you probably want to make sure you check what your local ordinance is, especially if you're making your budget is a certain, amount, because I was checking around, and yes, it is, the IRS is, your board should be meeting at least once a year, but some cities may have different ordinances that might require more meetings, or may have specific a time for how long those meetings are. Like San Francisco, if you have at least $250,000 a year as a budget, annual budget, you need to meet at least twice a year, and your meetings need to be at least 30 minutes. So I was looking at different things. So just make sure you check with your different cities that you're operating in. But yeah, you are correct. It is for the state, it is at least once a year.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Very good insight. We got y'all covered. Let's see here. I have some activity in the chat. All righty. Thank you guys so much. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. All right. So there is a lot to budgeting. We're not going to learn everything in a day. What I will tell you is to build your team, build your board in a way that is conducive to operating the organization. There's a few things that are important in selecting your board. We do have a cheat sheet that we will make available so that you can have the insight on like the tactics and kind of the questions in the process of selecting your board, right? There should be an interview and onboarding process. There should be specific criteria. Your board should consist of people that can support you in budget and grants solicitation, as well as building community and network. Ideally, the best people for your board are people who are already established, affluent, or who have a very broad time contribution available, right? So people like us who are in the thick of it are not good. People ask me to be on the board all the time. And I know, sis, because no, sir. I'm building too, boo. I'm 2 months away, 3 months away. I don't know, 6 months away. I ain't a year away, right? I might be cool for 6 months if something happened. So you want to consider these different factors in your budgeting. When you're looking at your board, you want to consider these different budgeting factors, right? How are you going to create the money, which is your income? Who's going to help make sure that the way the expenses are set up is managed, right? Your programs, who's looking at how the programs are set up and are they copacetic to your budget? Okay. You want to definitely have some generally accepted accounting practices in place. And I would definitely say always two people you want to get on hand are an accountant and a tax consultant. Third, I would say keep a lawyer on deck, but for sure, them two money people, that is a thing that we develop. It's a skill we develop. I'm gonna just say it that way. Asking for the money is different than writing out what we want to ask for it for. But it's important that we have it written out. So I'm going to share my next slide, which is usually people's least fun thing to look at or do. This is a budget. We don't like doing this stuff. Most of us don't play with numbers like this. But it's important that we understand a couple of things about our budgets. The key thing that I would love for you guys to take away is that there are two very different kinds of budgets that work together, but you got to be able to understand what each one of them is, right? One is an organization or operating budget. And I would even just say your organization budget, because you can break operations down into its own departmental budget plan, but your organization has an umbrella budget. This is every single penny broken down and categorized by the way the money comes in and the way the money goes out. In layman's terms, it's the far most left corner section of what you're looking at. So this column A is everything. The business is accounting for everything in this column. Now, what happens is a lot of us, because we're operating from a place of community and first-time executive leadership or ownership, we may have built what is more applicable as a program budget. In our organization budget, there does live money that we dedicate to programming. Okay. Now, in this example, everything has been placed together, which I highly suggest that you guys do. If it's not your skill, get with someone who can support you. This is the stuff that you don't want to skip. This is the stuff you don't want to compromise. There's some things that I'll go to Ross for, and there's other things I'm just not doing that. I'm not taking my business books to any Ross situation, which is me doing it. And even me with a background in finance and in money, who can do budgets, taxes, and all kinds of stuff, I turn my stuff over and pay somebody. Okay. The reason is because your budget for your programming needs to be fully incorporated and add up to whole dollars in your operational budget. So what you saying, Treese? I'm saying this column D and this column E in this example are programs. Okay. As you can see, they are defining where the money's coming from, donations and grants, but it's broken down. Where is it coming from for each specific type of program? So when we're looking at running multiple programs, one of the first questions should be, do I have the capacity to triple, 5 times, or 10x the amount of reporting, documentation, and time that I am putting in now for one program? Because you have to replicate that same amount of energy, right? It's not just reporting on the one thing. You're now keeping track in every single area for each project, for each program. Okay. In addition, they still have to add up to the real money that you found, which means I have to start out when I'm planning my mission, vision, and values. And I have to form this with an idea around what type of financial identity we want to build. I should have that before I continue to be aggressive in doing the work. Not that I stop the work, but that I'm formulating the work in a way that adds value to the community because I've thought through the equity. I have thought through the finances, and I'm being a good financial steward. Okay. When that happens, it's easier to keep track of your budget because then you are simply adding on new programming that you pre-map out, you pre-formulate how much it costs to run that programming, which then gives you a better idea of how you're going to continue to staff the organization. This is why your board is so important, because they are the people who help you get the money, and they are the people who are holding you accountable to explain who you're bringing in to help execute the work or where you're spending the money. So you really want a board that is tactical, resourceful, cognitive, and who supports you and your vision. Let's be clear, right? People that you can actually trust. I'm going to pause there for questions, comments, feedback, or anything about this budget template. You guys will be expected to start working on a budget template to formulate and do some breakdown of where you lie. So if you have questions, now's a great time. And learning as you go, how you spend the money impacts will you get more money. Being able to have your eyes and hands on all these moving things all at once, which correlates to having a team. And then a lot of the propositions and bill changes that are happening in real time that will affect the way that a lot of our nonprofit organizations are able to show up and serve in Oakland. So there's a lot to chew here, you guys. I'm going to go ahead and move into the last segment of our talk, which is the anatomy of a grant, which is important. This is the reason this part of the conversation follows everything else, is because what Brother Sue just said, right? A lot of times we don't get this enrichment. So we don't know, we work with what we have, but we don't know what we don't know. And then we learn on the back end. So the way that you set up your board, the support that you have, and the way that you document all of this in your bylaws to keep you grounded in your operations is really key, because getting money is not the same thing as keeping money. And we know that. We know, we've lived a don't tell the left what the right hand is doing type of life, and that just does not sustain in business. Left gonna see, right gonna know. Okay. So there's a few things that your board is really critical for that we've already talked about: your connections, your ability to have management and delegation. Okay. But also your documentation, the way that you're able to gather data, track data, and keep track of the business identity, which is all of the documentation that supports who you are and what you do. It's all the papers, right? And in that is a standard grant application and the components that you're responsible for completing. This stuff should be ironed out before you ever submit it somewhere. You definitely want to have eyes and ears on these different aspects. We talked a lot yesterday about origin story, mission, vision, values, theory of change, right? That's your evaluation plan, outcomes and impact, your program budget, your program plan, needs statement. Why are you asking for this money? The history and capabilities. What can you do and what do you not do? Okay. And so there's lots of strategies to getting and winning grants. I'm not going to read each of these. I am going to read this one that I have found to be the most helpful takeaway that all of our cohorts 1 and 2, I've seen them go through the growth spurt. You have to have a dedicated staff. You have to have support. This is where the rubber meets the road. And even if it's someone even if you reach out and say, hey, Letitia, I just can only afford someone to read the grant, review. Do you have anybody who's a coach, a grant coach who can I can pay to review my grant, right? You want to get some eyes and ears on the grant. So I definitely suggest that when you are looking at writing and approaching grants, that you are doing it from a lens where you've got some support in your budget, where you are meticulous about your board, and you are sure that everything is in alignment with your bylaws, because that's going to help you select the best people to be on your grant writing team or your finance team. Any of this makes sense? Anybody have questions? I see some head nods. I see some some movement. Let's see here. So in your grant applications, you'll find varying formats, right? Every entity has an ability to create the specifics the way that they want to, but these are the universal sections of a grant that you'll always need to be prepared to articulate. And so it is best to develop what I call business copy. That's your standard templated formatting that you can refer to anytime you have to provide language or summary of intellectual property. If I have to say it, write it, know it, I want to come across uniform every single time. Okay. Couple of things to consider. The funder's advantage. When you're filling out your grant, one of the things that Letitia mentioned yesterday, I think she mentioned it or I said it, but like looking at the end and then working backwards. It might've been in our meeting, but looking at the end and working backwards, right? So you want to consider, what is it that's going to make them say yes? What are they screening me based? Start there. Not from, oh, because they need to know what I do. No, what are they trying to hear about? What are they scoring me on? Are they looking at my service? Are they looking at how little money we have? Because sometimes it could be we don't have money. And we spend all this time trying to explain something they don't care about. And they just want to see your books. But you didn't focus on your budget, or you didn't want to show your deficit, right? Paying attention to the budget, having your ducks in order. They need to see numbers and strategy. And then being tactical. When it's your time, it's your time. Shining where you can, right? So your program, your plan, what you've done, who you are, what you can do if you have more money, those are the areas where you definitely want to be passionate, but you also want to be tactical and make sure you're putting in the key verbiage that matters the most to your area of service. One of the other things that we're going to provide tonight is a grant checklist for you to audit. See if you have all the aspects of a grant checklist, as well as a template, a grant application template that you can fill out. Part of that is your budget. So if you don't have a budget, that becomes part of the homework. Any questions? I'm going to pause there and turn it over to Letitia for some feedback. We talked about a lot so far. I'm going to pass it over to her, and she'll speak for a few minutes, and then we'll go right into our conversation with Sean. Good morning, Tisha.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Hey, good information, rich information. I want to hear from the cohort. Is this information repetitive for you all? Are you taking away some insight and ahas? And then I'm going to get to Kareem's question as well. But I want to hear from you all. How is this landing? Because, you know, we want to adjust and make sure we're meeting you where you are. So I guess by show of hands, if this is new information for you, thumbs up. If it's a reminder or a refresher, thumbs in the middle. And if this is like, I don't need this, thumbs down. Let's see where you're at. Okay, refresher. Brother Suja. Okay, this is new. Refresher, Janaea Kasla, are you here with us? Oh, let's see, we have a new person today too. Is it Deanna?
Dina.
Oh, Dina. Okay, great. Yeah. A good mix. Okay. Good to meet you. Can't wait to hear more about your work. So what I'll say is, when you think about board development, board involvement, you do definitely need a starting place, but in good practice, since you all know how often you're supposed to be meeting, at least annually, and according to setting forth your bylaws, on that agenda for your first meeting as a founder, there should be some goals that you have set forth for your organization, and your board, even if they're not paid, should be assisting you in providing guidance and, you know, weighing in on your strategy towards achieving those goals. So your goal could be, hey, we're looking at this operating budget, like Natrice highlighted, and we need to double or triple this for this one program if we're going to sustain for the next year and be whole, or 2 years. And so the goal is to increase, funding, and let's brainstorm some strategies towards getting there. So that's not costing them anything, but their intellectual ideas, creativity. We know how to fundraise. We Black people, we know how to survive. It can be a rent party we throw, a bake sale. Somebody's grandma know how to make a sweet potato pie. They don't have to. When we think about fundraisers, and this is what we've learned from our first 2 cohorts, from a grassroots perspective, you start where you are. You start with, we've had people in cohort 1, they launched their nonprofits during the pandemic based on generating revenue through Facebook, Cash App, just on there saying, hey, we out here, we need to feed the people. We need to deliver some groceries to our seniors, whatever you all have. They on Facebook Live. And here's my Cash App handle. And bling, 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 So, without a board, without a flyer, without a space reservation, without a DJ and food and fancy napkins, they generated $5,000, $10,000, just starting with their network. And so, I'm just thinking about your question, Kareem, in that you talked about you're a paid employee, but how do you ask volunteers? It's of their time. What can they give? Who do they know? It could be $5. I remember serving on a board that was a very affluent, mature board. Everybody was a lawyer, insurance broker, owner of a company firm, a doctor, and me. Of a very highly reputable, longstanding nonprofit. And I served on the board, and I was wondering, what's my value add? What y'all ask me? And they said, well, you have the human services background, you're connected in the community, and you have great ideas, and we love your bubbly personality. Okay, but what am I supposed to do? What I will say, it was a very thorough process for joining that board. There definitely was an interview, and followed by an orientation. There was a 2-day orientation. And in the orientation, I received a big, thick binder that had the bylaws, the strategic plan, the operating budget, the organizational tree, the org chart, a bio about the executive director, their resume, and an overview of everyone else on the board, their profiles. And I thought, wow, and a notebook of Robert's Rules of Order, because that's how they ran their meeting. So I was very clear, on day 1, I was clear on the assignment. I just was not clear about my area of contribution, because at that time I wasn't able to write no big checks. And so I thought about it. They said, oh, they selected me because I'm well connected. Well, they were hosting an event, or there was a fundraising goal, I think, $50,000 for this one particular program. And I said, you know what? I know people. I could actually ask my sorority sisters to host a public awareness event, and we could put together some resource bags, get them out into the community. We can generate visibility for your organization. So that's what I brought. The other thing was they were dealing with low staff morale. So you can also utilize your board to support your staff and helping you cultivate the culture that you want for your organization. So I think my role was, for a straight month, each Friday, I would bring cupcakes, treats. I just set up a treat bar for the staff to appreciate them and leave them thank you notes. They didn't know it was anonymous from a board member, but that was my contribution, and I can do that. So the onus on the founder and the leader is to really think about your team. It's almost like playing, fantasy league. I don't know nothing about fantasy league, but I imagine you're looking at your team, you're looking at your squad, and you're like, okay, who are they? Who do they know? How do they move and operate in the world? What can they give and contribute? If they can't answer any of those questions, then you kind of know what you got to do, right? Like, it's not a bye-bye, but it's a see you later for now, because we have to achieve this mission and our organizational goals, right? If they cannot, not use, but it's kind of like Robin Hood, right? We know who we're serving. We want to serve our people. So we got to go get those resources, and make sure that we're well oiled so that we can continue to serve. So you should always be thinking about succession planning and onboarding if you're starting out. If you have the bare minimum 4, then in that scenario, you may have to continue with that person, but, maybe engage with them as well. Like Tree said, don't let the left hand know what the right hand doing. Be transparent. That's the kind of leader you want to be. Transparency, right? It builds trust within your culture and within your team. So for you to be honest with that person, hey, it looks like it's not working out for us, now it's not you, it's not me, it's not a good fit at this time. Engaging them on that conversation, that's my view of it. And so how about we both spend the next 30 days looking for a good person? I even want to bring you in, helping me identify the right person. So let's set a goal, and if you can't have that kind of conversation with someone, then you might want to reevaluate. Are you a program or are you a nonprofit? Is this the right time? Is this the right season, right? Because we all know when it's the right season, things flow, right? If you're getting pushed back and it's not working and it's just impenetrable forces at you, then it's time to reevaluate and reassess, right? Because you want to operate and live your life from a place of joy. You don't want to enter this space leading from, within your first 5 years and it being like impossible to do, on your soul and your spirit, you know what I mean? From that place. So I hope that was helpful as well.
There's so much wisdom. I'm going to turn it right over to Sean because we still have a packed rest of the morning for the time that we do have. I turn it over to you, Sean, for the next part of our conversation this morning.
Thank you. I'm going to be pretty quick with some of this, but I'm also going to piggyback off of what you all have been saying this morning on a couple different items. So we're going to be talking a bit about contracts. One thing that is really funny, we're talking about budgeting and the planning and strategies and working with a number of different individuals, from the board to staff to community, right? And then it's like, how does that relate to contracts? It was like, you would be surprised how every single bit can go into a contract. Right? So I'm going to share my screen for a second once I get through all my different slides. So I'm going to give you a snippet of this so that you can also, so it'll be easier, like a visual, to see some of this. So I'm going to go straight into kind of, again, contracting, right? So I'm going to skip through and just kind of go through the high level of what is a contract, okay? So there's a number of different stages if you're looking to get a contract with an organization, right? And we're going to talk a little bit more in a second just about how you get those contracts. And a lot of it comes from relationships, comes from your experience, it comes from your organization. If in my previous role, when I was asked to procure a partner for a contract, okay, for some services that we needed at a site. Here's our budget. Here's what we do, right? If I didn't know somebody, if we didn't have a procurement process, it was pretty much going to be, who do I know in this community who can point me into a direction? I got to do my research. I got to vet people. It's a bunch of meetings. If I don't feel a good vibe, I'm not going with you, right? If your organization does not align, if there are something that, like, you send me over a proposal and it's just, what is this, right? I'm not going to move forward, right? So And I've also helped folks with their proposals. I've given people tools. I have shown folks how to do in situations, especially when they were already in that community. They have already been helping my folks. Those are folks I want to work with. I'm gonna help them get there so they can get this money, right? And once we go through all those different phases, we go into contract length, right? And so again, there's different types of contracts, to the fixed contracts, to the cost plus, to those that are just time and material, to the no cost. So typically what you all will be experiencing will be the cost and the cost slash fix and the no cost. So the no costs are typically memorandums of understanding, so MOUs. So you're going to see a lot of those. They are not legally binding. I'm just letting folks know. It is literally, we're outlining our expectations. So you may get a grant, right? You get a grant for $50,000 to provide this program, this like services to a community for a number of months, right? You want to work with an organization. Organization is going to come to you and it's just like, okay, if it's a series of this at this place or with our folks or what have you, we need to go over some expectations, right? What do you really need from us? But we're not going to provide you, we're going to provide you access. And we're going to provide you money. We go through this process of creating an MO, right? And it will outline those expectations. Do you need space? Do you need a room? Do you need support? What outreach do you need? This, are we meeting monthly? Like, are we receiving reports? Do you need reports from us? Do you need a list of those individuals that are at the site or that you're working with, right? That and then your contract could look very different. It could be where you do have space agreements to, against, of course, most of all, not all will have scopes of work. You'll go into maybe even some liability language that you will have to be insured. We're not going to let folks on our property who don't have insurance. And we list that out. So, but again, these are the expectations. And sometimes a MOU could just be a letter of intent. We have taken those as acceptable for discussing different applications. But usually we'd like to have a formalized MOU that you may have. You might have your own MOU template that you use. That is totally fine. I've told folks plenty of times, it may be easier to just go with yours and just add. Because mine is like 20 pages. And I have a ton of requirements, right? Just for a non-legally binding document. The one thing, transition, but most folks want a contract. They want to pay a contract for a fixed amount of time that's providing a specific service. And this is legally binding. This is the thing that we will hold you to the fire, right? And to get to this point, I'm always telling organizations and individuals and nonprofit leaders that we need to really go through the scope of work, right? Generally, when we're using our templates, the scope of work is very general. We get into the details of the exhibits, right? And I had one founder and board chair, because he was the one appointed to negotiate contracts because of his background. And he ripped our contract template apart. And I was just like, okay, so right. The negotiation took 3 months. I will tell folks, if we were not in a bind, I would not entertain a 3-month negotiation for a contract. Right. So I will tell people to be ready to compromise, to understand that everybody has their expectations around this, because there's money on it. And if we're spending money, then you have to beat the bare minimum of those expectations. If I like you, right? If the community likes you, if our nonprofit leaders like you, right? So it can get a little daunting to meet some of these requirements, but I guarantee you, if you get a contract that's and I always tell people something over a year, because what we would used to have was at least 1 year terms with 5 years of renewal, because we want to keep folks. If it's working, it's good. There's a clause in there with the terminate. I mean, I give you 60 days, and we're done, right? But we want to make sure that, because folks want services or programming that's going to continue on, because that's where you start to see the impact. You don't see it usually in the first month. You see it after year or two, right? After folks build those relationships, after folks build that trust. And I'm gonna keep talking about trust and those relationships to build those communities. It goes all over. Contracts to impact to your donors, it's going to be there. Same basic core values apply. So this is quickly the stages of this process. There's a request, there might be an RFP process. Even with those RFP processes, I'll tell people, read your instructions, please follow the instructions. And if you are not this 30-year-old nonprofit that has all these systems in place and these structures, I encourage you to partner with somebody that may help enhance your application, your proposal. Okay, that is always a thing. It does take time. I will tell folks to draft, have it read, have it make sense. Again, follow the instructions, and even connect back with that contact with that organization if you do need understand like more clarity around those instructions, right? Some folks, if you're good, and I will say this, and in government organizations, this is what they should not be doing, because it could be a violation, giving too much guidance and too much support, right? But I've also seen folks that have done this, right? And they'll just hook you up through the process because, again, they want to bring you on because you like it, right? There's this negotiation process for once you win that RFP when we get the contract. There's still negotiation. There's still approval. There's execution. So everybody signs. We're good to go. Budget's good. Everybody signs, and then you're off to the running, right? You document. You go through and start tracking. You do your reporting. You do your admin. You do the service, right? And this is kind of typically the contract management and contract process, right? And so contracts look a little bit like this sometimes. This is really generic, so just let y'all know, because they can come in different forms, different ways. But you have your main header, you have your recitals, you have your scope of work, you have the termination clauses, you have your compensation, your budgets, or just how much you will provide, how much the budget is for that contract. Your liability, make sure you are all insuranced up, because what was coming up was cybersecurity insurance. That's a new thing that's catching people. And literally had a couple of organizations that were just like, huh? I mean, again, the more established ones already have this built in, or it's coming kind of standard, but some folks, some of the smaller ones did not understand what that was. Right? And my apologies, my dog is like screaming outside. Intellectual properties and confidentiality clauses, you have your non-disclosure. And you've all seen this. Some of you have all seen this, if not all of you have seen this before. But I also tell folks, really, really dig into making sure your recitals are correct, making sure your scope of work is appropriate, making sure there is a termination clause that you are okay with. Because some folks can we can terminate immediately without notice, right? Some people advocate really hard, give me at least 60 days so I can transition my people. Okay, you could be literally, it could be like you working. You could contract with somebody, they could work for an organization for years, and next thing you know, we have a budget issue. You need to terminate our contract. So you have somebody who's worked there for 3 or 4 years, and now they're about to lose their job. Right?
Can I chime in real fast? So we're focusing on the contract process because generally when we started these 2 cohorts, folks didn't know the difference between a contract agreement and a grant agreement, right? Our folks, our people, love our people to pieces. But oftentimes we'll start a nonprofit from a place of passion, and we heard about a grant. Right? We know grants. We know grants for school. Grants will get you through school. Grants will help you start a business. But no, we have to unpack what is a grant. That's why this is an anatomy of a grant solicitation. Foundations, the philanthropic sector, they provide grants, unrestricted or restricted funding. They don't use contracts, many of them. You'll have a grant agreement with the terms and conditions that look very similar to the document that Sean provided. However, governmental organizations, the public sector, they operate through contracts. So the difference, why are we making this distinction? Because they're two totally different bags, two different expectations, two different cultures. We started this C4ES to educate our people about the governmental public sector contracting process, because that's where we have the greatest deficit and disparity in Black-led organizations. So the public sector has the larger bag. You can get a $600,000 contract agreement with the probation department for 3 years, right? You can get a one-time grant for $60,000 from Kaiser Foundation for 1 year, right? We're trying to position our folks to get the bigger bag, the sustainable bag, through government, intergovernmental, public sector funding opportunities, but it's a different language. And so that process that Sean just shared with you, that can take just steps 1 through 4, that can take anywhere from 6 months to a year. So that's the other thing, the time involved, right? If you have insurance and you're wanting to contract with a local government, so I'm talking county, schools, universities, right? City, the courts, make sure if you have insurance, you're able to add those jurisdictions into your endorsements, because they're going to ask you for that. We need to be endorsed and included in your insurance. So and if you don't have that, that can delay the process, right, of them ratifying your contract agreement.
Or in the process.
Or in the process, if you can't get it. If it's $50,000 or more in your contract, it has to go before their governing board to be approved. And that's based on them agendizing your matter, making sure it's heard and approved. So I'm sharing this because we have examples in our community of organizations that have been serving people, hiring folks, and they don't have the financial runway to sustain the project, and they have to close and fire people and end the program, So thinking long game, that's why we're doing this. We're providing you the information so that you go in eyes wide open and you don't get your feelings hurt. Like, oh, they let me. No, running your nonprofit is like running a business. So take an MBA, crash, master course, whatever, because you're running a business, right? So if you want to go after the big bag, make sure in your business account, you have 1 year to 2 years worth of runway to sustain your project, because it may take that long for you to get your first check from said government institution. Does that make sense? Okay.
I'll even add, it may take even months for it to be, even a contract to be signed. And I've gone through that process, which I had to go back and forth with the city of Fremont to get one thing signed. And they were like, well, why don't you do an amendment to do this? I was so reluctant to get an amendment because it could take 3 to 4 months to have something signed. So if I'm doing a big thing, it has to be the whole entire contract, right? And then there was another piece that you mentioned just around getting this bag and securing it. You have to be on your reporting. Like I will not stress to you how, if you are missing marks, especially with government related reporting, you will lose out. And even with, and I've worked with a lot of bigger organizations. Like, we were so set on reporting, right, that if you could not meet our reporting standard, we were consistently like, yeah, we're just gonna pass. Right? Government organizations are worse. So there's a lot in that. But I'm gonna pause for a second. Any questions? Anything coming up for you all?
I was saying you don't have to accept all money. All money is not good money. If you don't have the bandwidth, save yourself the time and stress and your
Yes.
brand, the
Yes.
reputation, and just say, no, we're not ready, at this time. It's totally that part, right? And count it as a nod of, of confidence that someone wants to give you something. But if you're not ready, don't accept it, right? And so SLEB, small local emerging business, SLEB. So you can become a SLEB now. We will go over that. And you can collaborate with other organizations who are not SLEB certified, but who may have the infrastructure that you need. Infrastructure, they have a grant writer, they have insurance, all the insurance in the world that you need. And so it's not to discourage you from going after these multi-year funds that you'll need over time, right? You want to have a diversified portfolio. You want to have your grants, your contracts and your donations, right? That your board members are going to help you generate. So rich stuff.
I turn it back over to Sean.
As I'm looking at this, I'm trying to make sure because I know we're at time, so my brain is thinking like we're at time. I know we gotta go. So just not much else. Just wanted to make sure because again, Tisha covered some of the points I was going to get into, and so I think we're good for the contract piece. The one thing I did want to stress, really, we're going back to Latrice, what you were talking about earlier, Tisha, what you were talking about with the boards, with accounting, with the boards, with financing, with community building, with providing impact is community building. So keeping that at the core of what you do can really benefit everything, especially around your fundraising efforts, right? There was one thing around that was mentioned earlier about board members kind of not having capacity. And Letitia just said the word like expectations. You have to set clear expectations, not just with your board, not just with your staff, but with yourself and everybody. But you have to make sure you are building relationships. It's not about asking first, because I like you and you need to make sure your organization is together. Right? Why? And we're going to go into exercise, but we don't have time for it. But we wanted to really practice and model you presenting your 1 minute quick proposal so that you can get this contract, right? And I will tell folks in a very nice way, right? We won't be able to move forward with you. Your proposal just doesn't seem like it aligns with our expectations, and I'm just like, but it's in the instructions, it's in this thing. Yet again, maintaining that relationship with people, right, and being persistent. Some of those folks came back and would ask them, "Can we do? Can we do?" And I will say a few of them actually did try to go into contract, at least start up at MOU. When they got a grant, they wanted to still work with us. And I was like, great, because we maintain that relationship, right? Even if there's a no, still maintain the relationship, get feedback, like cultivate that, connect the network, right? Because I also would recommend folks to go here and go here and go here, or provide them letters of commitment or support or grants, right? So that's a key point. Build those relationships, build that trust. Have your story, have your numbers together, have it all, but please remember, don't ask first. Cultivate that relationship, because that's going to be key to building your community.
All right. That sounds like a full day. And that leads us right back to days 1 and 2, the wrap up. I'm just going to say, I act before I ask. I act before I ask. I operate in values. I show up and I serve. I am performative and developmental for myself before I ask for money. So when I ask my rate, I usually get what I ask. Or it's a really great compromise, right? But I'm not walking away upset, and neither are any of my clients. Everybody happy. So you want to win like Treese or better than Treese, or win with Treese? Do you a favor. process this stuff, you guys. Take some time tonight, digest today. You do have several assignments. We will be making sure you get them. He did mention the 1-minute pitch for $50,000, the pitch prep for 50K. That's part of your assignment tonight. We didn't get to it in class. That just means we all have time to get ready because we was going to put y'all on the spot. But tonight you get to get a little bit ready and gather a pitch prep. 1 minute, that means 60 seconds or less pitch prep for $50,000. Who's going to show up ready to win in the morning? You show up ready to win, you can get feedback for when you're really in front of the finances. That's the key, right? You do it for free, then you get the fee. I'm going to let y'all go. Your homework is the SLEB, to review the SLEB document, start to dig into that. I would love for you guys to please complete and send your grant checklist. Complete and send your grant application template. If you have not already completed one, please complete your CEP. And friendly reminder, we are down to the get down. I need everyone to be checking your emails and following up. We do have Sarai working in the background who's sending out emails. We want to make sure that you guys get a couple of things, which is one of which is to make sure that we get your photo and your organization summary. We need that so that we can share it for the newsletter. If you follow us on LinkedIn, you'll know when the newsletter drops. If you don't follow us on LinkedIn, you need to go into the CEO's office and follow us on LinkedIn. Okay. And also, Sarai's reaching out about one-on-one conversations with Letitia. So if you've not signed a document that Sarai has, talk to her about scheduling an appointment with Letitia for a follow-up conversation, or followed us on LinkedIn. Here's your reminder to take care of those things. Any questions before we get out of here? All right, y'all. Thank you for staying over. It's a full day. Tomorrow is our network meeting. Please be on time. Be ready to state your name and organization as your intro into the group. You will be joining the C4ES network members along with some guest speakers who are very special, important people. So I hope you're excited. We get ready to be in community and network. I see y'all bright and early.